Access more.
Welcome to Thought Revolution, a podcast designed to reframe how you see the world. In this episode, we're going to talk about Kanye West and the idea of Christian celebrities' best or worst idea ever. I can guarantee that whatever you think right now, you will think a little bit differently after we're done. This is Thought Revolution.
Thought Revolution
Podcast. It's the Thought Revolution Podcast.
Thought Revolution
Podcast with Lance Hahn.
Well, I'm glad that you joined me today, that you and I can have a conversation here. Before we get started, let me always remind you that new episodes of Thought Revolution come out every Thursday. If you haven't already subscribed now on Access More, make sure to do so, or wherever you get your podcasts, so that you never miss an episode. And I have to say that the subject that I'm talking about today is a little bit different for me, and I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating to you. I had to do a lot of research about this one. I'm kind of a research geek, so kind of really got into it and dug down deep. So anyway, I hope that this blesses you and helps you think about the world a little bit differently. How about we get started? Let's do this. On July 19th, 2020, the rapper, producer, fashion designer, and billionaire Kanye West announced his bid to become the president of the United States. And he has actually filed in Oklahoma to be on the presidential ballot. So what, right? So what, another celebrity decides to run for office, and that's not new, right? I mean, we've had a ton of those. Besides, you probably think it's a publicity stunt, right? And so it's just going to blow over, and he's just trying to get attention, and right? So what does this have to do with us? What does this have to do with Christianity? And why in the world am I talking about it? Because it matters, and let me tell you why. An entertainment website called Wonderwall.com described Kanye West in their July 8th article as, quote, the billionaire born-again Christian and Yeezy brand founder. That was their introduction. Why is that important? Because I can't remember ever seeing a description for another secular artist of this magnitude described as a born-again Christian on a secular website. What this means is that to a watching world, Kanye is the biggest and brightest shining star for Christianity on a world stage. Is that an exaggeration? I don't think so. And let me tell you why. Since 2004, when he first hit the scene solo, after successfully producing other artists, he launched his debut rap and hip-hop album, The College Dropout, and he has been extraordinarily successful ever since. Listen to these stats for a man who is only 43 years old. His first album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard charts, went platinum, selling 2.6 million copies, and it garnered him 10 Grammy nominations, of which he won 3. Since then, he has released 10 studio albums, 8 of which debuted at number 1, which was only done by the Beatles and Eminem. All of his albums have either gone gold or platinum, selling in total 21 million albums and over 100 million digital downloads worldwide. He has earned a total of 21 Grammy Awards. No rapper has ever won more. He launched his own label. He released three collaborative albums, a compilation album, 2 operas, 2 live albums, and became part owner in a music streaming service called Tidal. That is just what he has done in music in the last 16 years. But that's not all that he does. In fashion, his fashion brand Yeezy and his fashion designing has allowed him to partner with Nike, to partner with the French label APC, to do Paris fashion shows, to sign a $10 million deal with Adidas, and most recently signing a 10-year deal with the retailer Gap stores. You say, yeah, but what does that have to do with Christianity? In recent years, Kanye has engaged in a walk with God as a devout Christian, and he launched a series of live, invitation-only, Sunday service sessions where he has a choir sing both his music and gospel music, and he conducts his version of church. He performed and led this not only in Coachella last year, but at Joel Osteen's Texas church Lakewood to a full house of almost 17,000 people and countless people online. His 9th album was called Jesus is King, and his 3rd collaborative album was called Jesus is Born. He has topped both the charts of top Christian albums and top gospel albums. He is open with his dedication to God and freely shares the gospel publicly. When asked why he's running for president, he replied that God told him to. His public comments are that he is no longer in the service of fame or money, but in service to God. So, what's the problem? Isn't this like the best news ever? Well, kinda. I've known of Kanye West for years and years, and I'm sure you have heard of his name. But interestingly, I have never listened to a full song of his, couldn't name one of them. You see, I don't know Kanye for his musical nor his fashion ability. I know him for being famous, or should I say, infamous. When his beloved mother passed away in 2007, Kanye changed. For the last 13 years, he's been known as the guy who got Kim Kardashian pregnant 3 months into their relationship, married her, and has been with her in her rise to infamy with her wild public life. He's been known as the man in 2009 who rudely took the mic away from Taylor Swift publicly at the MTV Music Awards and demanded that it should have been given to Beyoncé. He's known for his 2013 album track titled I Am a God and his narcissistic rants. He's known for his 2015 rant at the Grammy after party demanding that Beck should not have won the best album, but Beyoncé should have won that as well. His wild Twitter rants over the years proclaiming things like Bill Cosby is innocent, his fans should all demand Mark Zuckerberg pour $1 billion into his ideas, claiming to be $53 million in debt, saying that he and Donald Trump shared dragon energy and that slavery was a choice. In 2016, I knew him as the artist who came to Sacramento, California. That is my home area. In the middle of the concert, he goes off on a garbled rant on stage about politics, stops the show, then cancels his next 21 tour dates and ended up hospitalized in the UCLA Med Center for the next 8 days for what he later admitted was an opioid addiction. And most recently, on July 21st, 2020, 2 days after his presidential announcement and his rally, he went on Twitter and viciously attacked his wife and mother-in-law, saying that he's been trying to divorce her for a year and that they're trying to get him committed to a psych facility. To which his wife then replied on Twitter that he is bipolar and that people need to have compassion for him. Being bipolar is a fact that he spoke about in an interview 2 years prior to this. And then a few days later, he was treated by a hospital in Wyoming for extreme anxiety. What is the point of all of this? That Kanye is our Christian most public face to the world, and he is a mess. Do I blame Kanye? No, I don't. Why? Well, first of all, it is because he suffers from mental illness and he's doing the best that he knows how. I know mental illness well. I've written about it in my own personal life. I totally get it. It's very, very difficult. Is he handling it well? No, I don't think he is. But I think he's doing what he knows. Second of all, he has a brand new relationship with God that he is still sorting out. Praise the Lord that Kanye West has been saved by Jesus Christ. And thankfully, he is free to talk about God, and he's free to talk about the importance of following Jesus Christ. Most of us won't even share with our friends, family, or neighbors. You see, he's allowed to grow up in his faith. He's allowed to grow up in maturity like the rest of us. Do I wish that he wasn't our most public spokesman? Yeah, very much. But I am so proud of him for not hiding his faith and for embracing it full on. So what's the problem? The problem is that Kanye is living a messy life, trying to sort his walk with God, and he's doing it all on the biggest public stage in front of cameras and microphones. It's both promoting God's name and smearing it all at the same time. But that's what happens with Christian celebrities. Let me ask you a question. Would you want it any other way? Would you rather have a huge star come out as a Satanist? Would you rather have more celebrities celebrating drugs, violence, and sex? You see, we don't get to have perfect celebrities, Christian or not. We only get human ones. And there lies the quandary. Are Christian celebrities the best or worst idea ever? Well, actually, I'm going to start in the Bible for this one, because I believe that the Bible tells us a whole bunch about this. So let's begin in Philippians Chapter 1, verse 12 through 14. I want you to know, brothers, Paul says, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Did you catch it? Don't you want your kids to follow good role models? We complain about all the bad ones in society. So, do you want a poster of Billy Graham in your kid's room, or do you want Lil Wayne and Lady Gaga? You see, I understand no kids buy posters anymore. That's totally old school. And I would tell you this, if we really started selling Billy Graham posters, I think everybody would freak out. They would think that was super weird. But yet we have posters still, even though no one's buying them, of all kinds of stars, of all kinds of movies. And yes, I will say that this whole concept of Christian celebrity freaks me out, but probably not for the reason that you're thinking. I think that highlighting Christians is brilliant, and I wish we had a bunch more cool Christian celebrities. My biggest concern is human nature and the fallibility of mankind combined with the pressures of celebrity status. Why? Because it's a bit of a powder keg waiting to go off. But are Christian celebrities a bad thing? It sounds weird, but is it a bad idea? Human nature needs heroes. Shouldn't they be Christian? So let's talk about it. What is the difference between role models, heroes, celebrities, and idols? Role models, heroes, celebrities, and idols. The difference is the heart that engages with it. The facts are relatively the same. They're all famous. You see, famous just means being known. To me, the biggest question is what they are known for. If a Christian leader is known for standing up for the faith, then they are a hero. If a Christian leader is known for being rich and famous, it's a miss. If a Christian leader is known for taking on injustice, they're a role model. If a Christian leader is known for having the biggest church and the biggest social media following, it's a miss. If a Christian leader is famous for pouring their life out for the hurting, like Mother Teresa and William Booth and Clara Barton and Florence Nightingale, we have heroes. If a Christian leader is famous for being crazy, wild, and knows famous people, we're in dangerous territory. The discerning factor between role models and idols is the hearts engaging in them. Think about Hebrews chapter 11. We call it, in Christianity, we call it the Hall of Faith, right? It's kind of the Hall of Fame for Christians, where the author of Hebrews kind of grabbed all these famous stories, shoved them together, and said, these are people that were hardcore for the faith. Here's the reality. It's really just a famous people list. People who are supposed to be role models to the rest of us because they had the faith that saw through their circumstances and followed God despite their fear. As a matter of fact, Paul the Apostle tells us in 4 different passages in 4 different books to follow him as he follows Christ. What that would mean in today is the only way to do that is to pay attention to what he does and to follow his social media. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, we learn of a church split happening over Christian celebrities. Some said, I follow Apollo. Some said, I follow Paul. Some said, I follow Christ. The problem was not that these people were known. It was that the church was using role models as leverage to divide and to control other people, and they were turning their role models into idols. It crossed over in their hearts, and the result was division. An example is great, but it has to be an example of the real thing, and the real thing is usually messy. Jesus is the only one worth worshiping. So let's talk about Christian celebrities from this new vantage point, right? So we seem to be completely cool with Christian celebrities once they're dead. They just have to be dead and we're all good. Let me give you some famous examples. George Mueller, do you know who this is? George Mueller is this guy from 1805 to 1898. He ran an orphanage for 700 children, and he was an absolute man of faith. There's all these crazy stories about he didn't have any food for the kids, and then he told the children to get ready for dinner. They all sat down, he prayed, and then a milk truck and a baker's bread truck, the milk truck broke down in front of it. The baker said he was told by God to bring food, and food showed up at the door. There's a famous story about how he needed a certain chair for his wife on a voyage, and it didn't show up, and they said, we can't wait any longer. And he said, just hold on one more minute. It's on its way. And he just knew it by faith, and it showed up. There's the story about him trying to keep the kids warm, and the boiler wasn't working, and he needed workers that would help, so he prayed for hard workers and for the wind to change, and it shifted, and they got it built, and the kids got warm. The story where he told the pilot of a ship that was drowned in fog, he said, I'm going to pray for the fog to lift. And the pilot said, okay, I'll pray after you. He said, no need. We're already done. Just go upstairs. It should be clear by now. This man, if you want to talk about a rock star, a guy that has that kind of faith, how do we even know that? Because he's famous. He's a celebrity. Hudson Taylor, 1832 to 1905. 21-year-old man from Liverpool, England, sets out in 1853 to reach China for the gospel. That's kind of a big feat. Ends up founding the China Inland Missions, and millions are reached, and China is transformed. Amy Carmichael, 1867 to 1951. Born in Ireland, she built a church for the poor. Despite her own personal illness and weakness, at 34 years old, she felt the call to go overseas, and as a single woman missionary, she went to India. She spent 50 years becoming a mother, quote unquote, to hundreds of poor girls who would normally be sold into temple prostitution, and even bedridden from a fall for the last 20 years of her life didn't stop her, because she wrote an additional 16 books about missionary work beyond the 20 she already wrote. And the list goes on. How do we know this? Here's the famous people: Jim Elliot and his crew, Hudson Taylor, D.L. Moody, Billy Sunday. How do we know these people? They're famous. They're celebrities. Don't you want your kids to look up to people just like this? Yeah, but you only seem to be good with it once they die. When the church leads, when Christian leaders lead brightly, it is glorious, but it's always complicated. Being famous draws fire, because too many eyes are watching a fallible person. Let's talk about one of my personal heroes, Martin Luther King Jr. If you have ever read his letter to from a Birmingham jail, it is one of the most brilliant pieces of literature I've ever read. He's a role model to me because he did great things. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. He would never claim to be. Not only was he under fire for sin issues in his own life from the church when he was alive, but in 1963, he came under fire from his fellow Christians for his methods of bringing change. They said that he was too extreme and he needed to mellow out and just let things go. So he responded in a letter. And it has incredible similarities to what Paul the Apostle experienced when he was in jail. Let me just give you a sample of this letter. My dear fellow clergymen, for years now I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. Perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. I mean, I'm just telling you, this is a little tiny sampling of what this guy wrote. It was absolutely brilliant. And there is no question in my mind that he changed the reality for African Americans. He took the hits. He ultimately died for the cause so that others might be free and equal. But he was a normal human being who had his own issues, but he sacrificed and he spoke in a way that moved us. But it was so complicated. He's just a human being. Notice that it all depends on who's writing the narrative about what really happened and why, whose side you're on. One person's hero is another person's enemy. It is always that way. Let me give you this really extreme example. I think almost all of us in the world today, and especially you and me, would say that Mother Teresa is the epitome of someone that is self-sacrificial and lived for God by helping other people. Can we agree on that? All right, check this out. On March 15, 2016, an Indian writer of the Huffington Post, Krithika Varagur, wrote, quote, Mother Teresa was no saint, end quote. The whole article blasted her for mismanagement of funds, poor health care, selfishness, forced conversions, and distorted views. And she said that she is a white colonialist and, quote, a relic of white Western supremacy, end quote. So which is it? What's real? You see, the debate that is even raging in our nation right now about Confederate statues in the South demonstrates my point. Who your hero is depends on your perspective. Heroes are complicated because we're talking about real people here. Every human being is part hero, part monster. Not only that, but they fluctuate over time. There's a ton of people who started out really good and then went bad over time. There were some people that started out terrible and became awesome over time. People are complicated. The bad parts of them don't wipe out the good parts and vice versa. Bill Hybels, James MacDonald, and Mark Driscoll once were heroes in the Christian world to millions. All three of those were removed after a long tenure of leadership for abuse of that same leadership. But that doesn't mean all the incredible truth that they provided and the insights that they gave are not true. Their ministry has value. What did you expect? If you expected anything more than human, you were in for disappointment. This isn't new. As a matter of fact, Martin Luther, of whom Martin Luther King Jr. was likely named about, but Martin Luther is the father of the Protestant congregation. He led the Reformation in the 1500s. Martin Luther, heralded by many as a father of the faith, wrote a 65,000-page booklet called, quote, The Jews and Their Lies, end quote, and he encouraged their persecution as evil. His books were used as evidence in the Nazi movement of how what they were doing was justified. It's always been like this. We must walk the radical middle line between excessive criticism and blind worship. And I would suggest to you it is a wide swath. We need to call it what it is. Some messed up people do some great stuff, and some great people do messed up stuff. Wisdom takes it case by case and calls out what is really happening. Wisdom doesn't sugarcoat. Wisdom doesn't turn a blind eye. Wisdom looks straight through and appreciates the good and holds the bad accountable. It was this way in the Bible. The patriarchal fathers of the faith, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, were normal people. I can't find evidence of one great husband in the Bible outside of Boaz. And I can't find evidence at all of one solid father in the Bible. I'm sure there were some. but we would have to speculate because we don't have any evidence. The Bible highlights a guy named King David, who was perhaps the messiest, most complicated guy, and yet the Star of David is on the Israeli flag even to this day. The dangers of heroes, idol worship, role models is that you become what you worship. Not just the parts you like, but the parts you don't like as well. Therefore, there is only one we are allowed to worship, and that is God. All others are suspect. We can learn from them. We can appreciate them. We can celebrate their wins. We consider their losses. We can hang their poster in our room. But in the end, it's all about God. He's the one moving through our heroes and flowing through our role models. What we love in our heroes really comes from our Father above. So give credit where credit is due, both in the vessel, but even more so in the source. Bottom line, we want Christian role models. We want Christian heroes. We want Christian celebrities. But we must always remain wise in who we lift up, and we must never make them into an idol if we can help it. This is Thought Revolution. Thanks for listening. New episodes are released every Thursday, so make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And please, make sure to leave a rate and review of the show. I'd sure appreciate that.
Thought.
Revolution.